Hi, this is Jeff Blowett, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, we probably need to talk about what some of this hail damaged corn that we have in Lyon County and then the neighboring South Dakota and Minnesota areas that got hit with this hail that we've had. Luckily, not all of our trade territory did get hit, but we did have some pretty significant damage in some of these fields. So I thought we'd talk about, so what's that, ramifications, what's that going to do for us, or to us, I should say. For the corn perspective, let's talk about, there's two phases. One is the amount of defoliation and how bad is that. And then in some of the areas we got enough hail damage where we actually busted the top of the stalk off, maybe above the ear hopefully, but maybe not even all of that either. Might even be some fields with more damage below the ear. But for the most part, let's talk about what that can do yield-wise as far as the impact. If we look at the defoliation part of that first, a lot's going to depend on the stage of the corn. Is it just starting to dent? Is it half milk line? Is it 3/4 milk line? That's going to make quite a difference here. From a defoliation standpoint, I've got a picture here of some various levels. I would say this first picture, we're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 50%, 60% defoliation damage. And then I've also got pictures here of, it's not all of this field 100% defoliation, but let's look at a few plants. They're busted over here. So that top of the plant is gone. That would be the same as 100% defoliation. We've got fields, I don't have pictures of them, but we've got fields where there's a lot of the plants are busted off at the top. So various levels of that. But 50% defoliation, let's say it's that late dent, so maybe half milk line. Probably looking at 50% defoliation, maybe being, the data will say 5 to 7% yield loss potential for that. If we have 100% defoliation, or the top of that plant's broken off, those plants are probably looking at somewhere between 15 and 20% defoliation, or yield loss, excuse me. So that's kind of what yield impact can be on that. The other aspect is going to be stalk damage. I've got a couple of pictures here. It looks like the stalk damage is worse than it really is. If you look at this first picture, and then you've got some hail dents that are actually looking pretty bad. But as I look at this next picture, I pull that same plant, I pull that leaf sheath away. See, there's very minimal impact to the stalk itself. So the stalk damage is not near what it looks like here. But, and I don't have pictures of those, but we do have some fields that had some stalk damage as well. So obviously if there's actual stalk damage, you have an entry point for disease. Stalk rots and smuts and those types of things can be pretty severe here in the coming days. We've obviously changed our weather pattern. We've got a lot more moisture in the atmosphere, moisture in the canopy and in the fields, so that's conducive to disease development. And then there's one other aspect of this that we need to consider as well. We've obviously got ears of husk on out there that had some damage as well. So here's a picture of a plant that had, or an ear that had some damage and hail bruises to the husk. And then as I peel that husk away, you can see on this picture, we were damaging those kernels enough where there's some of the juices in that kernel all of a sudden allowed that inside the husk to create some kernel molds. That's going to be a factor too that we really need to be cautious of. So it's hard to pin a yield impact on that, but there's probably going to be some quality concerns there. Obviously, if we're going to wait and combine that corn, storage is not going to be very good. The grain quality won't be great. So that's not going to be very desirable, obviously. Hard to put a value on that, but we need to be aware of that if we're storing it. And if best case scenario with this hailed corn is if we could just chop it into silage. And siling it will help stop the mold growth and development. It won't fix the mold development that's already there. So we'll want to be cautious of that on the feeding side to make sure there's not anything harmful to the cattle. And I know there's a lot of acres won't get chopped, but the ones that do, we'll just need to be cautious of that because we're going to have various levels of damage and various levels of concern, and that's that's just going to have to be a case-by-case decision on what we need to do with that. But if we are ensiling it, having a good inoculant so that fermentation can take place adequately and rapidly will be much more helpful. So it'll be ultra critical that we do the best we can to take care of that silage to keep the quality as high as we can. But hopefully we don't have any more severe events. We've had enough this year with the drought and then some wind, and then of course we finished it up with some of this hail stuff that we've had going on. So hopefully we're done with Mother Nature's wrath, but I just thought we probably ought to talk about what this hail is going to do to some of this corn, because we have acres that are affected in a chunk of our territory. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.